In the busy city of Corinth, Paul sat down with his friends Silas and Timothy. They were thinking about their friends far away in Thessalonica. Paul remembered how, when they first visited, the people had welcomed them with open hearts. Even though it had been a difficult time, the people there had chosen to follow Jesus with great joy. Paul picked up a pen to write them a letter, wanting to tell them how much he thanked God for their amazing faith and love. Paul looked at Timothy and smiled. "Everywhere we go, people are talking about the church in Thessalonica," he said. Timothy nodded, remembering the stories they had heard. People across the whole region knew how the Thessalonians had turned away from stone statues and idols to serve the living God. Their faith was like a bright signal fire that everyone could see. Paul wrote down that their lives were an example to every believer in the world. Paul began to write about the time they spent together. He reminded them that he hadn't come to get rich or be famous. Instead, he worked hard making tents day and night so he wouldn't cost them any money. Paul described his love for them like a father's love for his children. He even brought over a young boy named Demetrius to help him with the leather. Paul wanted to show that following Jesus meant being kind and working hard for others. Because Paul couldn't go himself, he made a big decision. He looked at Timothy and asked him to go back to Thessalonica alone. It was a long, dangerous trip, but Paul needed to know if their faith was still strong during hard times. Silas helped Timothy pack his cloak and some bread for the road. They said a prayer together, hoping that Timothy would bring back a good report. When Timothy arrived in Thessalonica, he found his old friend Jason. They sat together in Jason's house, and Timothy's heart leaped with joy. Jason told him that despite the troubles they faced, the believers were standing firm. They still loved Paul and were helping one another every day. Timothy saw that the seeds of faith Paul had planted had grown into a strong, beautiful garden. Timothy rushed back to Corinth to tell Paul the news. When he arrived, he found Paul and gave him a big hug. "They are doing wonderfully," Timothy cried. Paul felt like he had been given a new life. He picked up his pen again to finish the letter. He told them that even though he was in trouble in Corinth, hearing about their faith made him feel strong and happy. Paul then wrote about a very special hope. Some people in Thessalonica were sad because their loved ones had died, and they worried they would never see them again. Paul told Jason and Demetrius in his letter not to be sad like those who have no hope. He explained that one day Jesus will return from heaven with a loud command. Those who love him will meet him in the clouds and be with the Lord forever. But when will this happen? People wondered. Paul wrote that the day of the Lord would come like a thief in the night when no one expects it. He told Demetrius and Jason to stay awake and be children of the light. He didn't want them to be afraid, but to put on faith and love like a suit of armor. By staying kind and watching for Jesus, they would always be ready for his return. Paul finished his letter with some famous instructions that are easy to remember, but take a lifetime to do. "Rejoice always," he wrote. "Pray without ceasing. Give thanks in all circumstances." He reminded Silas and Timothy that God is faithful and will help them do all these things. As Paul signed the letter, he sent his love to everyone, knowing that the great hope of Jesus would keep them strong until they met again. Not long after his first letter, Paul received a new message about the church in Thessalonica. Silas sat with him as they heard that their friends were facing even harder times. People were being mean to the believers because of their faith. But instead of giving up, the Thessalonians were growing even stronger in love. Paul's heart swelled with pride. He knew he had to write to them again to encourage their brave hearts. Paul called for Timothy to bring a new scroll. "We must tell them that God sees their patience," Paul said. He wrote that even though they were suffering now, God is fair and just. One day, Jesus would return in glory to bring rest to those who are troubled. Paul wanted them to know that their endurance was a sign that they were truly part of God's kingdom. In Thessalonica, Jason and Demetrius were confused. Someone had told them a scary rumor, that the day of the Lord had already happened and they had been left behind. They sat together by the city wall, Looking at the horizon with worried eyes, they wondered if they had missed the great hope Paul had told them about in his last letter. Back in Corinth, Paul realized he needed to clear up the confusion. He told Silas they shouldn't be easily shaken or alarmed. Paul wrote that before Jesus returns, there will be a time of great rebellion. A man of lawlessness would appear and try to trick people into following him instead of God. Paul explained that this had not happened yet, so they didn't need to be afraid. When the letter reached Thessalonica, Jason read it aloud to Demetrius. Paul told them that Jesus would defeat that man of lawlessness with just a breath from his mouth. Hearing this, Jason and Demetrius felt the heavy weight of worry lift from their shoulders. They realized that God was in control of the future, and they could trust his timing. Paul also had a special request for his friends. He asked Timothy to join him in a prayer. "Pray for us," Paul wrote, "that the word of the Lord may speed ahead and be honored everywhere." He wanted the message of Jesus to spread like a fast runner winning a race. Paul knew that with God's help, the truth would reach every corner of the world. But there was another problem in the church. A man named Theron had stopped working. He thought that since Jesus was coming back soon, he didn't need to help anyone or earn his own bread. He sat idly in the market while Jason walked past, carrying heavy bags of grain. Theron was becoming a busybody, bothering others instead of being helpful. Paul was very firm about this. He reminded the Thessalonians of how he and Timothy had worked while they were visiting. "We didn't eat anyone's bread without paying for it," Paul wrote. Even though they were teachers, they worked hard making tents so they wouldn't be a burden. Paul wanted to show them that being a follower of Jesus means being responsible and kind. Paul gave them a simple rule: if anyone is not willing to work, let him not eat. In Thessalonica, Demetrius saw Theron and shared the letter with him. Demetrius encouraged Theron to pick up a tool and help. He explained that doing good work is a way to honor God and help their neighbors. Theron realized that staying busy with good things was much better than sitting around. Paul reached for the pen himself to write the very last part of the letter. "I, Paul, write this greeting with my own hand," he noted, so they would know the letter was truly from him. Silas watched as Paul signed it with a blessing of peace. No matter what happened, Paul knew that God would keep his friends strong, working hard, and standing firm until the day they finally saw Jesus.